course. Actually, there is a alert to put on agenda. I think all of you are proud with what you are doing, but does a European regions, each another, the big one, rich one, small one, not so rich one, if they are proud with the possibility to invest and get back the profit, if they are the ones on the board already with all these, long talks, let's say, with innovation and research and importance of this for further development of economy. So how to put this high on agenda, not only for you, for scientists, but also for each and other citizen and regions themselves, those who take decisions in the regions. I think at least some of objectives or answers even are at least known, if not researched, by Commission. So this is why I ask Mr. Wolfgang Butcher, the Deputy Director General of Research and Innovation of European Commission, here to join us on a stage. But can I also, in the same time, ask Ms. Agrita Kiopa, the Deputy State Secretary of the Ministry of Education and Science of Latvia. You will be now two, probably, experts on these questions, but then we will also open a debate here in the hall, so please feel as an expert you yourself as well. Actually, Mr. Wolfgang, I wouldn't allow you to sit here, but actually to take the opportunity from the stage to address us. And before you go, can I also use a small opportunity to explain you why we Latvians choose the Amber Stone as a logo of this very event? Because up until now we thought it's just a mythical something. You can find it in the seaside, you can export it even to Egypt. But now we found out that the amber stone could be used almost as a live tissue for medicine reasons, for different reasons. So Latvia, I think, is very proud, and you will learn it in Friday night. What is the amber stone when you use it in really science, but then what you can also do is test it. I mean, it's eatable, and you actually have it. You have it in your bags inside. The amber stone you can eat. I suggest it's no problem. I mean, it's not poison. You definitely can eat it. Just for you to explain how attached we are to amber stone and innovation. Now, Mr. Butcher, we'd like to hear your observations on this topic of jobs and growth, or how to boost the innovation and investment in regions of Europe. Please.
Thank you, Ansis. Good morning, Minister Seile, Chairman Wutzans, Deputy State Secretary Kiopa, Mrs. Steinbucher, Head of Representation of the European Commission here in Riga in Latvia, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very honored to be here to represent Commissioner Moedas, who unfortunately was not able to attend this conference in Riga today. He has asked me, first of all, to congratulate the Latvian presidency for organizing this 6th edition of the Week of Innovative Regions in Europe, following on from those held in Granada, Debrecen, Krakow, Cork, and Athens. And on a personal note, I would really like, and certainly on behalf of all of you, thank the Latvian presidency for the hospitality and the warm welcome we have received yesterday in Jurmala. Now, the successive WIRE conferences have given us the valuable opportunity to take stock of ongoing developments in the important relationship between research and innovation on the one hand and cohesion policies. While previous WIRE conferences have focused on the development of the future of research and innovation system, it is now, as the conference rightly states, it is time to act, with an emphasis on implementation in the context of smart specialization, closing the innovation divide, and overcoming barriers to innovation. Innovation is indeed essential to preserve and improve Europe's competitiveness and our ability to create jobs, but also to tackle the societal challenges which we are facing as human beings, as citizens. It is not a surprise, therefore, that research and innovation was and continues to be a cross-cutting priority for the Commission under President Juncker. But there can be no room for complacency when we see the formidable and growing global competition. The latest annual Innovation Union scoreboard, and Minister Saley has referred to this, published last month, makes clear once again that Europe is in a global race. We need to be frank with ourselves. There remains a clear gap in innovation performance between the European Union on the one hand and the United States and Japan. And with regard to Korea, this gap continues even to widen. On the other hand, don't let us forget, China is catching up. And of course, as illustrated by the scoreboard, there remains also a wide gap in terms of innovation within the European member states and regions. Also, there are some encouraging developments in the sense that it seems that the convergence amongst member states at least is increasing, and this is one of the findings of the latest innovation scoreboard. In addition, the European Union as a whole remains far from reaching the target of investing 3% of its GDP in research and innovation. In fact, 2013, Europe's R&D intensity was only 2.02%, and you all know that this is also, and in particular, due to the lacking investment of business in research and innovation. To illustrate what this means, we need only to note that the difference in R&D intensity Europe faces, for example, with regard to the United States, actually amounts to an investment gap of over 80 billion euro every year. And you can imagine that this matters whether you invest 80 billion euro or not in research and innovation. So what action the European Commission is taking? You will hear shortly from Commissioner Crețu, responsible for regional policy, on the current situation in relation to the new cohesion policy program for 2014 to 2020, especially in the domain of research and innovation through smart specialization. So I will focus firstly on Horizon 2020. As for Horizon 2020, I think we have really made an excellent start. Just look at some figures. For calls which have been fully evaluated by the end of April of this year, of 2015, we have received 43,000 proposals. 43,000 proposals, and we have already signed 3,300 grant agreements involving a new financial contribution of 5.4 billion euros. So I think the launching of Horizon 2020 was a real success. What are the reasons? They are manifold, but certainly our simplification strategy has paid off, and the large response from stakeholders also confirms that potential applicants find the non-prescriptive, challenge-based approach very attractive, and this is certainly one of the reasons why so many applications have been handed in. But again, there is no room for complacency. We will continuously try to improve and make sure that the lessons we have learned from the first calls are fed through to the design and the implementation of the next work program, 2016-2017. You know we are now working with 2 years work program, which most likely will be adopted in September, October of this year, with calls opening afterwards. In addition to this practical progress in the implementation of Horizon 2020, on the ground, we are continuing to develop EU research and innovation policy and practice, as well as playing an important part in the wider policy agenda of the new Commission. from the European Fund for Strategic Investment, on which just recently an agreement has been achieved in the legislative process, in particular due to the skillful handling of these negotiations through the Latvian presidency. So we have this new European Fund for Strategic Investments, we have national structural reforms under the European semester. Just recently the European Commission has launched the initiative for better regulation, in particular to have a better framework, better eco-conditions for fostering innovation. Now, it is clear from the figures on implementation of Horizon 2020 that we are investing many billions of euros through Horizon 2020. And it still and remains true that this is the only part of the budget 2014 to 2020 which has a real growth, of about 30%, which is even more surprising if you take account of the fact that the overall budget of the European Union is decreasing by about 5% compared to the period 2007-2014. However, research and innovation is growing by almost 30%, which really is a proof that the Commission is convinced, the European Union is convinced that investments in research and innovation are decisive for our future competitiveness. So, while it is sure that Horizon 2020 is the most ambitious EU research and innovation program ever, it alone cannot fill the investment gap we face. This is why, shortly after taking office, President Juncker unveiled the investment plan for Europe. The newly created European Fund for Strategic Investments will finance riskier and therefore more innovative projects. This will certainly help companies to bring their innovations to the market using financial instruments like equity to complement the grant funding available under the structural funds and Horizon 2020. And there were at some points of the discussion doubts in the research community whether this European Strategic Fund will also be available for research and development, for innovation. And you will see when you read the regulation as soon as it is adopted that there can be no doubt that also operations regarding research and innovation will be eligible under this new European Fund for Strategic Investments. Actions like research infrastructures, demonstration projects, cooperation between academia and industry, knowledge transfer, technology transfer will all be actions that will also figure prominently amongst the actions eligible under the new Fund for Strategic Investments. The investment plan will enable the financing of projects that have a viable business plan, but where financing needs carry a higher risk profile, as I have just indicated. I'm convinced it will be a win-win for Europe as a whole and for research and innovation in particular. Now, the next level of action the European Commission is following very carefully is national structural reforms. It is not sufficient to spend money in research and innovation. We also need to ensure that the money is spent wisely, that it provides outputs, that we have efficient funding of research and innovation. So it's not just the volume of investments that matters, it's the quality as well. To achieve this, we need a Europe-wide effort to embark on ambitious reforms of national research and innovation systems to enhance the quality of public investment and, in particular, its leverage on private investments. In particular, to cross the gap I've just indicated, that we are lagging behind compared to other competitors when it comes to investments from the private side, from the business side. These messages are clearly reflected in the annual growth survey, which kicked off this year's European semester and emphasized the need to combine investments with structural reforms. Now, we all know that structural reforms are painful. it requires decisive actions from the policy side, but they are inevitable. The semester process can really help member states identify their priority reforms, but they also need help with the hard work of implementing those reforms. And this is why, in the framework of Horizon 2020, we have set up the so-called Policy Support Facility, which should help member states who want to review their research and innovation funding system, who want to foster the research and innovation funding system, should get support from abroad through peer reviews, collective analysis, access to expertise. This is what we can offer, and we are, to a certain extent, proud that certain member states already have made use of this opportunity and are asking for this kind of policy support to review their national funding, research and innovation funding system. Now, an important issue which I think is of concern to all of us and which is of key importance for the European Commission is the relationship between better regulation and innovation. In many areas of our activities, research and innovation, we are quite advanced when it comes to the status of research. But we see that the new developments are not deployed on the markets. There are many reasons for this. The question of access to finance, you have mentioned it, Chairman Wutzans, for the question of the pharmaceutical industry, but there are also regulatory burden, which might prevent new products, new technologies, new business models to be deployed on the market. We face a twin challenge in Europe. We need to foster world-class research, as this is indispensable for fueling breakthrough innovations over the long term, and we need to do better at developing our high-tech and knowledge-intensive industrial base. In short, we need a blueprint for a world-class research and innovation ecosystem, if you want, an innovation area which attracts the world's best brains and helps promote Europe as a magnet for international investment. And I come back on the regulatory question. One of the factors holding back EU-level innovation is regulatory barriers and bottlenecks. And I'm quite sure that you all know what I'm talking about. Just, I think, the day before yesterday, the German Monopolies Commission, the so-called Monopolies Commission, has delivered an advice regarding the question why new digital services and the emergences of new innovative business models do not take off on the markets. What are their difficulties? And I quote from this advice, and don't misunderstand me, it's not my advice, but it's food for thought. What they say is the following. They say the reaction of the legislator regarding new digital technologies, new business models, the reaction is frequently to subject the new market participants to existing regulations. The Monopolies Commission suggests, considering the opposite reaction, it is to reduce regulation also for the established market participants. And there is no easy reply to this, but you also all know the discussions about Uber, business model of Uber in taxi business, where these questions concretely arise. What is the right legislative framework to ensure that new technologies, new business models take off? So I think it's not just about less regulation or about more regulation, it's also about smarter regulation that gives incentives and spurs entrepreneurs to search for new innovative solutions. As a first step, the Commission is in the process of consulting a large number of organizations across Europe, including member states, exactly to identify these regulatory barriers and drivers for innovation in different sectors, as situations are quite different depending on the sectors. The evidence we gather will help us to improve, hopefully, the legislative landscape to benefit research and innovation. And, as I have indicated, the publication of the better regulation package that has been worked out under the leadership of Vice President Timmermans last month was an important step forward in this regard. For the first time, European legislation will have access to a dedicated tool for assessing the effects of legislation on research and innovation, which will become a parameter to consider when new legislation is proposed. In the Commission, we are currently considering policy options which will create the optimal conditions to drive innovation across Europe, building on what we have already achieved in the framework of the Innovation Union flagship initiative, which was implemented, or where we started to implement under the previous Commission. To help inform our thinking, a stakeholder conference called the New Start for Europe, opening up to an era of innovation, will be held this month, the 22nd and 23rd of June, in Brussels. Now, turning more precisely to the core of the discussion in the WIRE conference of your deliberations, I would like to mention three important issues: smart specialization, closing the innovation divide, and promoting synergies between structural funds and Horizon 2020. On the subject of smart specialization, as I have indicated, you will hear in a moment from Commissioner Crețu, so I will not say much. I will just underline the importance of the rapid adoption of the remaining smart specialization strategies as they underpin the future support for research and innovation in the ESIF programs. The report, which we'll hear later today, of DG RTD's expert group on smart specialization aims to help with the completion of the remaining strategies, as well as providing valuable advice on the implementation of those already adopted. Regarding the innovation divide, also some promising developments in terms of convergency. Despite serious efforts deployed at national and European Union, the Union still faces significant internal disparities in terms of research and innovation performance. There is therefore an urgent need to tap into Europe's unexploited potential in research and innovation through a stronger involvement of the member states and regions that have a low research and innovation performance. In order to address these multiple challenges, Horizon 2020 introduced some very specific measures for spreading excellence and widening participation in those member states and regions. And I just would like to take the opportunity to give you some first feedback as regards the successfulness of these new instruments under Horizon 2020. As you probably know, there are 4 action lines with an overall budget of about 800 million euros. Teaming, which supports the development of centers of excellence on the basis of partnership with international leading institutions. Twinning, which develops networking for excellence through knowledge transfer and exchange of best practices. And ERA chairs, which helps bring excellent researchers to institutions with a high development potential, and finally COST, one of the oldest European cooperation frameworks on science and technology that has now a strengthened commitment on widening the science and innovation base in Europe through a specific package of measures to boost science innovation capabilities in less research-intensive countries and regions. Now, what are the first results of this instrument? Already the first calls for proposals for the widening actions of teaming and ERA chairs have closed, and the results were announced to applicants already in February 2015. And I really can confirm, as for the rest of Horizon 2020, the great interest shown by applicants from all widening countries as well as from advanced institutions across Europe regarding these calls. This is very important, I think, for all of us. It's not only an interest on the side of the widening countries, but there is also a broad and enhanced interest on the other side, on the side of the more advanced research institutions, research organizations. And I think this is encouraging when we want to build and create this European research area, that there is interest amongst all concerned to intensify this cooperation. So, what are the figures? For the first ever teaming call, we have received 169 proposals for creating or upgrading centers of excellence in different European countries with low research and innovation performance, and 31 proposals are being funded to produce a business plan. There was also high interest in the ERA Chairs call, with 88 proposals received for bringing outstanding researchers to universities and other research institutions that have high potential for research and excellence, and 13 proposals were funded. From these first figures, you already see that again, as Horizon 2020 overall, this is a very competitive program, and the success rates are rather limited, but this is the price to a certain extent to pay for competitive programs. In addition, the twinning call has just closed, and here we have even received 553 proposals, which again confirms the great interest from all sides in widening actions. As is underlined by its inclusion as a plenary session, the achievement of synergies is vital for the effective exploitation of the resources made available for research and innovation under the structural funds and Horizon 2020. The structural funds operational programs already foresee the need for such synergies, and it is now necessary to ensure effective complementarity between the different funding sources for research and innovation. For that, the Commission services have made available detailed guidance to assist the Member States and regions and the participants to achieve such synergies on the ground. But synergies are already in action, as demonstrated, for example, by the launch of the SME initiative, a joint initiative developed by the Commission and the European Investment Bank Group, the EIB and the EIF, to boost access to finance for Europe's cash-strapped SMEs and make the best use possible of ESIF appropriations and EU-level financial instruments from Horizon 2020 and COSME. This SME initiative is the first concrete example that it is indeed possible to mix EU centrally managed funds from Horizon 2020 and COSME and ESIF funds to support access to finance SMEs. In last January, the Kingdom of Spain was the first country who decided to use this opportunity. Others are coming, like the Republic of Malta, for example. In conclusion, these are exciting times for research and innovation. A broad political consensus now exists across Europe that research and innovation are indispensable to sustainable growth and will underpin the new rewarding jobs of the future. We in the Commission, we will be working hard throughout the rest of this mandate to live up to the challenge and ensure that EU policies and programs in this field really add value to the efforts of those in the Member States and regions. I thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you a very successful conference. Many thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, and you of course please return here as we promised that if there are questions or remarks, then we will take them. Well, before you come on a stage, I'd like to say to everyone that probably there are many momentums in Europe they are searching for, but in between this conference here that will close on Friday and next week, Tuesday, there are just few days, and maybe that's the momentum, because commissioners for regional policy and finance will come to the presidency place, to the National Library of Latvia, to discuss exactly these issues. So thank you for being here in Riga, giving your input. Also, maybe it could boost the good decisions of the regional policy makers. Commissioner for Regional Policy of European Commission will also be there, and she sent us this video message especially to you. She wanted to be in the first row and maybe even here, but she didn't manage, so she will appear on the screen.
Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good morning from Brussels. I would have very much liked to be with you in Riga for the week of innovative regions, and so have the opportunity to address you in person this morning. Unfortunately, this was not possible due to other prior commitments. As you know, the European Commission is finalizing the negotiations of the programs of the European Structural and Investment Funds for the 2014-2020 period. 450 billion euros will then be available in the years to come to support key aspects of the real economy, such as research and innovation, ICT, SME, competitiveness, and many others. In particular, 40 billion euros will be exclusively dedicated to research and innovation in the framework of smart specialization strategies. And this is an unprecedented change. By setting up some smart specialization strategies, European regions ensure they make the best possible use of the EU funds for various reasons. First, they assure they build on their own strengths, on what they do best, instead of diverting resources to sectors for which they have insufficient competitive advantages. Second reason, smart specialization strategies enable regions to reinforce their respective innovation ecosystems, which are the cornerstone of growth and job creation. Finally, smart specialization strategies help regions to find their best place in international value chains, developing links with each other on research and innovation that allow to match business opportunities. However, adoption of the programs and smart specialization strategies is not the culmination of the process, just the starting point. Now it is time for translating robust policy planning into excellence, into the growth and jobs that European citizens are so much demanding. In this context, the key word that should steer every effort, every action is cooperation. Cooperation within regions and across regions. Within regions, the key to success rests on the capacity of regional stakeholders to work together, to overcome silo mentality and mobilize all resources available on the spot. In particular, the cohesion policy and Horizon 2020 communities should join their forces in order to enhance public-private partnerships in view of industrial leadership and challenge-based innovation. But cooperation within regions will not achieve its full potential unless it is coupled with cooperation across regions. We need to look outwards, across borders, in order to identify partners that work in similar fields and in similar directions, to do together what we cannot do alone. Therefore, I would like to encourage you to take any opportunity to share your dreams and forge links with partners beyond your home regions. The extreme diversity of the 300 European regions is a valuable asset which will allow each region to find a partner, whichever its status. Please make use of devices such as Vanguard Initiative, a network of regions committed to working towards common roadmaps and co-investments in a number of areas related to their smart specialization strategies. By doing so, it is so much that you can contribute to the recovery of the European economy and the future of our children. I wish you every success in today's conference. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to Commissioner Corina Cretu, Commissioner for Regional Policy of European Commission. So somehow we could say that our Latvian Commissioner, or at least executive for any matter of science, technologies, innovations, is Agrita Kiopa, the Deputy State Secretary of the Ministry of Education and Science of Latvia. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ansis, for raising me up. Well, anyways, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I'm really delighted to see you all here for this very important conference. I also would like to start with thanking our State Development Agency, DG Research and Innovation, and DG Regio, and also our good good friends and collaborators at the GRC for organizing this conference. I think it is crucial to bring together business, science, and policy makers to discuss and develop new recommendations for optimal use of policies and instruments that we have at our hands right now. Benjamin Franklin once said that without continual growth and progress, such words as improvement, achievement, and success have no meaning. So therefore, we think it is very relevant for transforming Europe in the post-crisis world. There is also still considerable consequences caused by economic downturn, which we feel and see in our daily lives. In fact, we see that crisis will only be over when the 25 million currently unemployed Europeans will find a job again that allows them to live with the dignity. The crisis, as we see it, will be only over when young entrepreneurs will again be able to obtain funding for their brilliant business ideas, and the crisis will be only over when we are looking at the stable growth rates in Europe again. So therefore, one thing is clear: if we want Europe to lead the global technology and innovation and to ensure the growth after the economic crisis, we need not only to step up the public investments in education, research, and development, but more importantly, also to find the ways of how our investments enable innovations across the range of the sectors and across the range of regions. In the current economic situation at times of the fiscal consolidation, finding the adequate public funding for research and innovation, including the research infrastructures, is not an easy task. And again, especially because effects of those investments are not immediately visible. However, we all know that member states that traditionally invest more in research and innovation are weathering the economic challenges better. The Europe 2020 proposes an ambitious headline target: 3% of the EU's GDP should be invested in R&D by 2020. Latvia aims half as high. We aim at 1.5% of GDP invested in R&D by 2020. For us, that not only means a significant upturn from 0.6%, what we spent on our research in 2013, it also means restructuring of our economy. We gradually are moving towards this goal. In comparison with 2009, the total investments have increased by more than 60%. But again, for us, it means restructuring our economy towards higher added value, productivity, and more effective use of resources. We have picked up a road which requires a strong commitment to increasing the capacity of our innovation system. The measures include consolidation of R&D resources around the most competitive research institutes, paired with strategic investments in infrastructure and human capital. With human capital, we understand researchers and engineers and also their networks that both embed them in local economy and also connect them globally. We also picked up measures for developing research-based higher education, for developing and introduction in our research and higher education institutions, output governance. By all means, investment in innovation is absolutely necessary. When we look at the recently released Innovation Union scoreboard, where member states are classified according to their average innovation performance, we see a very clear distinction between the core or innovation leaders and the rest, the innovation followers, moderate and modest innovators. What distinguishes the innovation leaders? They are few in numbers. Compared to moderate and modest innovators, and to a certain extent also to innovation followers, innovation leaders are characterized by higher prosperity, a combination of scale and diversity, higher international connectedness, and agglomeration advantages, such as opportunities from learning, sharing, and matching of agents, actors, and activities, opportunities for pooling the financial risks across the firms and sectors. The fact that countries like Latvia, Bulgaria, and Malta have been leaders in innovation performance growth in the last couple of years suggests that some of the policies that are in place at the national and European level have worked. The fact that new member states have been losing their ground in their participation in framework programs, however, suggests that some of the policies at the national and European level have not succeeded as well, or even have had adverse effects. These and other facts we observe about European innovation performance go in line with findings of innovation research that suggest that higher level entrepreneurship and innovation are in cities and more densely populated regions, in more sectorially diversified regions, in regions less dominated by small number of large firms, in regions with large numbers of internationally engaged multinational companies, in regions with large market potential. For us, therefore, the challenge has been finding the right answers to the following questions. How to address innovation policy failures and to learn from our and others' experience, how to apply policies with internal logic that favors core regions as a cohesion policy tool. Should policy spread public R&D investment thinly across several frontier technology research fields? Or should policy concentrate public R&D investment in programs that create future domestic capabilities and inter-regional comparative advantages? Being a modest innovator, Latvia has taken up the challenge. We are exploiting our smart specialization to full potential to transform our economy towards higher added value, productivity, and more effective usage of resources. Our smart specialization strategy defines following directions of transformation: the change of manufacturing and export structure in traditional economic sectors, finding future growth sectors with potential products or services with high added value, and also, and as importantly, developing sectors with significant horizontal impact on economic transformation. Latvia has defined 5 specialization areas: knowledge-intensive bioeconomy, biomedicine, medical technologies, biopharmacy, and biotechnology, smart materials, technology and engineering, smart energy, and ICT. 4.5 billion euro allocation under 2014-2020 structural funding in Latvia period is channeled into these areas. So to sum it up, I feel that strategic EU policy direction towards more investments in research and innovation is helping us to reach the smart and sustainable inclusive economy. Against this backdrop, European regions overcoming the innovation and research divide is crucially important with the regard to the innovation and research divide, as well as many other aspects. I really look forward to hearing much more success stories during the upcoming sessions of this conference as our speakers presented already this morning. I believe local and regional authorities have a key role in implementation of Europe 2020 and in delivering on its promises. Creating growth and jobs depends much on the right level of ambition and commitment on a EU, national, regional, and local level. I'm sure that the regions and cities do have this ambition. Certainly Latvian does. So, dear colleagues, I thank you very much for the attention and look forward to lively, fruitful debates today and tomorrow that will bring us clues or even answers to these important questions that here in Latvia we have been asking. And those clues or even answers will serve for us as a tool to be real enablers of innovation for our economies. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Ms. Kiopa, the Deputy State Secretary of Ministry of Education and Science of Latvia. Any or many questions? Let us see if you have something as a doubt, something that came up in your mind, a comment. Yes, just present yourself. And can I actually, before you start, ask one more colleague to come on a stage? It might be very helpful to Mr. Butcher if Charlene Vitcheva, you would join, please. We even reserved a place for you, please. You will be presenter of the next session, but now we think that might be some questions also addressed to you because you are director for DG Regional and Urban Policy. So please present yourself.
Hello. Hi, it's working. Aina Kelly, a journalist with Science Business, which is a news company in Brussels. My question is for Mr. Bircher. I was going to ask Commissioner Cretu, but she's not here. So I'll see if maybe you can answer. There was an idea, I think it was first put forward by the Research Commissioner in Brussels, that because Horizon 2020, the research program, is so overwhelmed with applications that there was an idea to maybe divert some of these applicants to regional funding. And I wonder if this idea is any closer to becoming reality or is it sitting on the shelf? So.
I haven't understood.
You want a repetition of the question?
Because this sound is quite bad.
The sound was weird, really. Can you do it like me? Look at this. Ah, you are very close to your microphone.
Is this better?
Much better. Huh?
Let's see. I don't know.
So the question was, well, there was an idea put forward by the Research Commissioner that failed applicants, people who have applied for Horizon 2020 money but have failed, could perhaps be diverted to regional funding.
What about regional funding to use for innovation instead of this the science money, or there is just a fusion idea?
I see. Okay.
So who is taking opportunity? All three of you.
Is this working?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Actually, it's true that here on the stage you feel, but there people hear us. Do you? Yes.
Okay, very good. I think, if I understand correctly, the question was that if following the grant management process in Horizon 2020, a project has been considered as excellent, it was eligible, but it does not qualify for funding because there are not sufficient funds available, then the question arises as to whether such projects can be funded under the structural funds. And I think this is an issue where our both commissioners, Commissioner Cretu and Commissioner Moedas, are really very interested, and they are in a very close connection, in particular in addressing this issue. And I think from our side, from the research side, there are some parameters which I think are quite important. The first thing is we consider that if a project is selected in the framework of Horizon 2020 or considered as eligible, it should be really an excellent research project. So it has, to a certain extent, the stamp of excellence, because if, in the light of the competitiveness I have just indicated, you succeed to be eligible, be it under the European Research Council or be it as a collaborative project, I think you have gone quite far. Now the question arises, can you fund it under the structural funds? And my understanding is, and Carlina will be much better placed to respond to this, as you know, the drafting of the operational programs under the structural funds is within the responsibilities of member states and regions. And I think from the basic regulation which we have set, nothing would prevent that in the framework of programming of national and regional programs, these kind of projects could be considered as eligible under the regional, national operational programs under the ESIF. But evidently, as we always insist, it's the choices member states and regions have to make, because they are in the driving seat when it comes to determine the content of their operational programs. So I think we would really think that it is a good idea, for example, take the SME instrument. We have newly introduced in Horizon 2020 the SME instrument. It's a very, very competitive instrument, because I think we have received thousands of applications and only very few succeeded. But many were considered to be above the threshold to be eligible, but due to the not sufficient funding, they were not funded. So if these SME projects, because there you do not have collaborative project, it's just one project owner, one enterprise. If member states, regions would in turn consider these kind of projects eligible under their regional programs, and I understand from our colleagues from DG RTD that there are already examples, best practices in this respect, where once a project has the seal of I have been eligible under Horizon 2020 SME instrument, automatically, more or less, they are considered for funding under the regional funds.
So now, automatically, is it really automatically, Charlene?
Thank you very much. In fact, we have to always keep in mind that we are talking about two different modalities. So one is the excellence type of projects under Horizon 2020. They're directly selected and the relationship is direct between the Commission and the beneficiary. In our case, with the European Regional Development Fund, which we're talking about, this is shared management. So Wolfgang is absolutely right that there is a say, a very high say there of the managing authority that deals with the relevant operational program. I would like to make several points. The first one is that we already have an experience in the period 2007-13, which is outgoing, where a list of projects was recommended by the colleagues from DG RTD that they are good projects, but there was not sufficient funding, and they might be considered. So many of these projects we financed. However, there are two issues that are very, very important for the next programming period with regard to such projects. The first one is that they have to fit the objectives of the program. And from there on, the selection criteria, which are not just eligibility criteria, because they might be eligible, but they might not be selected because the selection criteria want to focus on different types of projects. By default, good innovation type of projects should be high on the ranking list due to the selection criteria. The other thing which is very important is the smart specialization strategy, because what we're saying that under thematic objective 1, which is the innovation, research and development type of support, all the projects should be fully in line with the research and innovation, a smart specialization strategy of a region or the country. However, we tried our best on the Commission side, but also with the Member State negotiations on the programs, to have as much alignment, as much synergy as we can between all the instruments, and especially ERDF and Horizon 2020. So we are by default trying to include everything that relates to Horizon 2020 and the European Regional Development Fund to be part of the regional, as support, to be part of, of these innovation strategies. And one last point, because we have different focus, the two instruments. Horizon 2020 goes much more to the place blind and excellence type of approach. The Regional Development Fund goes much more territorial-based approach, where we are trying to capture the strengths for the regions, no matter whether it's high excellence or it is excellent but not at EU or global level, but is very appropriate for the region. And closeness to the market, so commercialization aspect. So having all that in mind, that gives you an answer that yes, it's eligible, but whether it will be selected, there are a number of conditions and criteria that have to be met.
Thank you. I think it was very clear explanation. One more question. Is it a follow-up on the same topic?
Yes, this is the same topic. I am Jānis Rubulis from Riga Technical University, and I was yesterday presented in brokerage event our proposal for teaming project. We reached this threshold. We were evaluated, but the money is not enough. And I'm listening you, all of you. Anyway, I have additional questions. So this means that we need to wait until that. When will be these criterions? This is one thing, and another thing. It means that we need to go for our Latvian institutions and talk with them. Something like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Which are the right doors to approach now for Jānis? With a good success on the first stage, but what about second stage?
Just to continue maybe the answer of my question, indeed I said it's not directly already communication with the Commission, so you have to communicate to the managing authority of the Latvian operational program, because there is one operational program that is for support under the European Regional Development Fund, and this is under the Ministry of Finance in Latvia. So you have to wait. First, there are two steps. First, that the selection criteria are adopted. I'm not anymore responsible for Latvia, but I can strongly believe that already the selection criteria were adopted by the first monitoring committee, maybe already last year. So the next step is that there is a call for proposals, and you have to appear with your application under the call of proposals that is announced by the Latvian managing authority. And there you have to compete with other projects on the basis of the selection criteria that are adopted. So I'm sorry. So I don't want to enter into that. You have to go the different path via the managing authority, which is the Latvian Ministry of Finance and its intermediate bodies.
But at the end of the road, you are so excellent. You are excellent to Europe and to your country or region. Huh? So that gives you strength, I think. The end will be successful, definitely. Now, any more comments, thoughts, questions, something that made you nervous about? Yes, please, just present yourself, please.
Muriel Atane from EARTO.
Please, I don't know if this, maybe you can use this mic much closer to your lips, please.
I will try to eat the mic then. Just a small question, and I would like to come back. My members are applied with such centers, so RTOs. They are not in all the country, but I have about 23 countries. The experience we have with the practical side of combining funding, it when it works quite well when you take the single grant holders in Horizon 2020 and go to your national authorities or the regional one saying, I got something. And that works well with ERC, with the Marie Curies, could be a potential with SME instruments, but it's one company or one single beneficiary. If you start looking in Horizon 2020 with programs with very complex consortia, the same thing that we have with GTIs or PPPs type of projects, I think those synergy of funds with Horizon 2020 and structural funds will be much more difficult to do. So I think there is good potential, easy way of doing a synergy of funds with Horizon 2020 for regions is to look at single grants holder type of program within Horizon 2020, but I don't think this will be innovative linked type of programs, more science and excellence-based programs.
So can you actually change it? What about this fusion?
I must say, again, I did hardly understand, and certainly this is not your fault, but I think it's the acoustic here. But I just want to repeat the general message that Charlina has already indicated. I think the point of departure is that these are two different instruments. Because you have the research funding instrument which goes for excellent research, but also research that should deliver innovation, that should deliver inputs. And then you have the regional funds, structural funds with operational programs, where regions and member states design their future strategies. And I think this is what Charlina has said, not every project under Horizon 2020 might be considered by the national and regional authorities to fit with the purposes and objectives they have put in their operational programs. I think that is, from my point of view, a decision the national authorities have to make, whether these projects which are selected in Horizon 2020 fit in the purposes of the operational program. So if I have said before, automatically funded under Horizon 2020, don't misunderstand me, there is still a choice to be made by the national authorities. What are their priorities in order to achieve their regional objectives? And the example of the SME instrument, innovative SME instrument, comes to my mind because if you are talking about smart specialization, a SME that has been chosen in the framework of the Horizon 2020 SME instrument should really be able to deliver towards smart specialization in the framework of a regional program. But this might not be the case for other excellent research projects on basic research about sociology or mathematics or whatever you might consider. So in that respect, I think the regional funds are not the default solution for Horizon 2020. It must still fit for the purposes of the national or regional operational programs relating to smart specialization.
Thank you. We started with a high substance and ended up with the money. Will your last question will be also about money or the higher substance? Please, present yourself.
My name's Adrian Healy from Cardiff University. Things always come back to money eventually, one way or another. There's been an interesting discussion at the moment between the synergies between Horizon 2020 and regional programs, often national programs as well, through the ERDF. One of the mechanisms that hasn't been mentioned, though, is the role of the Interreg programs in making the connections between network activities about picking up some of the challenges which perhaps teaming and twinning are trying to develop as well. And I wondered whether the panel could comment about how the Interreg programs might be developing this shared agenda at the moment. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Indeed, we have a much stronger European territorial cooperation strand this time around. And having innovation and research much higher as focus and as potential benefit for the economy this time around, I think that Interreg type of programs, they can be of high contribution. And especially if you heard, and it's very close to my heart personally, but the Commissioner Crețu, she very clearly said that one of the most important elements to bring up efficiency, and maybe we're talking all the time about synergies between instruments, but it's also territorial type of synergies, it's via cooperation. So cooperation programs, they can contribute a lot. And it's not only by soft type of investment, because normally we consider that the European territorial cooperation programs, they're more on the soft side, bringing on-earth networking capacities, bringing the exchange of practices and all that, but also hard investments. The other thing which is important is that we are trying to mainstream cooperation in the other programs, not just the named cooperation programs. So if we can achieve these synergies between programs, mainstreaming cooperation and using Interreg appropriately for them, rather for the soft tools, because they are not big programs, then we have good chances to succeed. Indeed, Interreg programs can be an instrument, a very good instrument for cooperation in the field of innovation.
Thank you. Maybe the last question or coffee pause time?
Coffee.
Yeah, there was one. Oh yes, please, Vidvuds. Finally, a Latvian question. So please use an opportunity.
Yes. Well, my question relates to the whole idea of smart specialization. Stanley just recently published a book called "Can Greatness Be Planned?" In effect, it says if you have, he's an artificial intelligence specialist. So if you have an algorithm, the algorithm will never produce a disruptive innovation. Okay, so if Europe is saying our foundation is smart specialization, in effect, we're creating an algorithm for the nation to strive for innovation. But in Stanley's book, he presents the idea that no disruptive innovation has come from setting an objective and working towards that goal. So the disruptive innovations in science have all been serendipitous. So how do we deal with that so Europe achieves disruptive innovations and not just incremental change?
So it was a question from Mr. Beldaus, who works for University of Latvia. Please.
I think these discussions about incremental and disruptive innovation and what are the sources for the one and the others are very, to a certain extent, also philosophical discussions, because normally one associates basic research with disruptive innovation and more applied research with incremental innovation. This is probably a simplification or a model that is probably true. But I think what we see more and more is that this distinction between basic research and applied research, the frontier between both is getting blurred and blurred every more, because I think we have very good examples where challenge-based research, as we call it, impact-based research, really is also able to provide scientific breakthroughs. So we do not only get scientific and disruptive innovation from basic research, but more and more, I think there is a very close interaction between basic and applied research, and both are delivering scientific breakthroughs which might lead to a disruptive innovation.
So we very much hope that each and every one of you will have these both options in their life. But now you have an option to take a coffee, please, for 30 minutes. We will return in this very session. Thank you, actually, to panelists. I'm sorry I didn't make it. Yes, thank you for answers to not an easy questions anyway. But at 11:30 we reconvene in this same room to go to the coffee pause. It would be better to take this staircase and to go just one level down. There is a white hall, as we call it here, in Latvian Society House. So 11:30 we reconvene. It's less than half an hour.